You know that neighbor who makes you feel like a failure without saying a single word. That guy who changes cars every beginning of the year, who drives slowly down your street, windows up, AC blasting, looking down on everyone as if he owned the neighborhood. Or that distant cousin who keeps posting photos in expensive Japanese restaurants with giant sushi boats. And you look from your sofa eating a simple sandwich and think, my God, what does this guy do that I don't? Why is his life a movie and mine is an overdue bill? I have urgent news for you, and it will take a weight off your shoulders. Stop feeling smaller. The neighbor's grass looks greener, but often it is painted plastic and financed in 60 installments. That guy you think won at life might actually be a desperate man. Mark and Julia were exactly that neighbor who rubs success in your face. If you looked at their life through the lying window of Instagram, you would bet your house that they had beaten the game. They were part of the untouchable elite. They earned what 90% of people dream of earning. $8,000 clean hitting the account every month. They lived in the gated community everyone wanted to live in, the one with a fancy name on the facade and a marble entrance. But the reality, the dirty, raw and shameful truth they hid under 7 keys inside their home, was a true financial horror movie. The $3,000 stainless steel fridge, that huge 2-door one that dispenses ice in the front. Inside, it often only had cold water and light. They were rich to society, but on the 20th of the month, they had to dig through the fancy sofa to find coins to buy bread. The money didn't run out at the end of the month. The month ended when the money had already evaporated long ago. They discovered in the worst possible way a brutal truth that will blow your mind. It doesn't matter how much you earn. If you don't master your money, you will be a luxury slave, whether earning minimum wage or $50,000. The whole isn't the salary. The whole is the soul. Today, you will know the real and detailed story of how this rich couple needed to be humiliated on the street under torrential rain, pushing their broken luxury car while the poor passed by honking, to finally wake up to life. And you will learn the brutal mathematical rule, the rule of life, that saved their marriage and that will make your money last. It doesn't matter if you earn $1,000 or $10,000. Stay with me, because this story is not a pat on the head. It is the revenge of the honest against the life of appearances. Can you hear that sound? Tick-tock. For the vast majority, this is just the monotonous noise of time passing. But for a silent and desperate portion of our society, perhaps for your neighbor who poses as rich, this sound is terrifying. It is the sound of life draining down the drain. To understand the size of the fall that was coming, we need to climb up to the glass pedestal where Mark and Julia lived. Imagine waking up every single day in a huge king-size bed, lined with 300 thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets. Sounds like a princess dream, right? But for Mark, that soft bed wasn't a place of rest, it was a wrestling ring. He woke up sweating with his pajamas sticking to his back and his jaw locked from grinding his teeth in tension during the night, dreaming he was falling into an endless abyss. The alarm rang at 6 in the morning, and the first thing he felt wasn't gratitude. It was panic, a tightness in the chest, a mild tachycardia, the paralyzing fear of opening the bank app and seeing that some check had bounced overnight, or that the account was in the red again. Mark was a manager, Julia an architect. Combined income, $8,200. 3 years ago, when they earned half that, they were happy. But then came the promotion, and with the promotion came the most dangerous virus of the middle class, the "I deserve it" trap. The day Mark got promoted, he looked at his economy car in the garage. It was an honest, paid-off car, like an old Honda Civic, but he felt ashamed. "I'm a manager now," he thought. "I can't arrive at the meeting in this old thing. I deserve a car that commands respect." It was in that moment that he signed his financial death sentence. He traded the peace of a paid-off car for the eternal debt of a used luxury SUV. Beige leather seats, panoramic sunroof. The payment was $2,100. It fits in the budget, he lied to himself. Julia was infected by the same virus. Honey, we earn well now. It makes no sense to live in this simple neighborhood. We need to live in a place that shows we won. They left the cheap rent and went to a club condominium. Rent plus fees, $3,500. Stop everything and feel the weight of this dumb math. Income of $8,200. Subtract $2,100 for the car. Subtract $3,500 for the house. Just on two things to impress neighbors, $5,600 were already gone. $2,600 remained. Seems like a lot. Try paying for health insurance, gas for the SUV that drank a lot, electricity bill with AC on, fiber internet, cable TV with 500 channels, business lunches, and designer clothes so as not to repeat outfits at the office. The math was mathematically impossible, but they had a crutch, the credit card. They used the card to buy emotional relief. They arrived on Friday, stressed, and thought, we suffered so much this week. We deserved to dine out at the best restaurant. The bill was $350. They didn't have it, but they swiped the credit card. Next month we'll see. And so the marriage turned into a cold war. Dinners at home were silent. You could only hear the fork hitting the plate. No one looked anyone in the eye. They lived in a solid gold prison. The bars were invisible, but they tightened around their necks a little more each day. They needed a reality shock, and the universe sent the signal on a Tuesday of torrential rain in the middle of traffic. It was rush hour. The sky was black and a storm poured down. Mark was coming back from work when the luxury SUV dashboard lit up, looking like a short-circuited Christmas tree. Oil light, engine light, and then a dry snap. Crack. Smell of burnt oil invaded the digital air conditioning. The car died and locked up exactly in the left lane of the busiest avenue, stopping traffic for thousands of people. Mark, in an Italian suit, had to get out in the cold, dirty rain. While he pushed that dead metal tub, drivers of cheap cars passed by. They didn't have pity. They had anger. Get that junk out of here, rich boy. Thinks he owns the road. There, the rich armor melted. But the true humiliation was at the mechanic shop. The mechanic gave the verdict with the coldness of a coroner. Doc, the transmission broke. Imported part costs $18,800 to get out of here rolling. Mark felt his blood freeze. He earned $8,000 and didn't have $1,800 to fix his work tool. He looked at the balance on his phone, $140. With a trembling hand, he pulled the black cards from his wallet, trying to keep the pose of a successful man. First card, not authorized. The silence in the shop was embarrassing. Must be the chip, he lied. Second card, the little wheel spun, insufficient funds. The mechanic looked at him with that silent contempt. The look said, you drive a big car, wear an expensive suit, stick your nose up, but don't have money for the repair. You are a fraud. Mark had to lie, say the bank system was down, and left the shop on foot in the rain. With the wet suit sticking to his body, he had to take a crowded bus to get back to the luxury condo. At home, the fight was ugly. What savings, Mark? We've been living on overdraft for 6 months. We used the limit to pay for the sushi dinner. That night, he cried on the expensive sofa. The next day, his mom called. Uncle Joe wanted to see them at the ranch. Mark didn't want to go. Uncle Joe was the poor cousin who had gone broke and moved to the woods. But Julia insisted, at least there we don't spend money and my phone doesn't get collection calls. The trip was silent. The arrival at the ranch was a thermal shock. They left the gray for the green. Uncle Joe's house wasn't a shack. It was a beautifully renovated colonial house. Everything screamed care. Trimmed grass, smell of oranges. Uncle Joe welcomed his nephew and niece with a strong hug. No frills. But during dinner, Mark's arrogance needed to speak louder. He felt inferior in that simple environment, so he needed to lower his uncle to feel like a manager. "Pretty place, uncle, but it must be hard living isolated like this, earning little, right?" "Without the comforts of the city," Julia added. "We know you lost everything. It must be a complicated adjustment living counting pennies." Uncle Joe just smiled with pity. "Tomorrow we talk about wealth. Now eat." That night came the true nightmare. Absolute silence. No internet, no phone. Their conscience began to scream in the dark. Mark thought about getting fired. Julia thought about the emptiness of shopping. Insomnia hit hard. At dawn, Mark got up and went to the porch. He found Uncle Joe there in absolute peace. Silence bothers those who have noise inside, right, Mark? At breakfast the next morning, Uncle Joe brought an old shoebox and took out an old photo. In the photo was him, young in an Italian suit, leaning against a convertible Porsche in front of a mansion. Mark almost fell off his chair. "That's me 25 years ago," said the uncle. "I had an empire. I earned in a month what you take 2 years to gather. I had everything, but I was miserable. I slept with pills, worked to feed my ego, and my wife was a widow of a living husband. When my partner robbed me, I went broke. I had a heart attack at 45. I woke up in a public ICU. Do you know how many rich friends came to see me? None. Only my wife was there. She said, 'Joe, the money took up so much space. There was no room left for you.' But I wasn't stupid. From the beginning, I took 30% and hid it in cheap land. When I left the hospital, I bought this farm in cash. I came retired. I have more money today than when I drove a Porsche. The difference is that today the money works for me. And you, earning 8,000 and living like this, you are modern slaves. You earn enough to get into debt, but not to be free." The silence in the room was absolute. Mark felt his face burn. Uncle Joe took paper and pen. "Let's do some napkin math. You earn 8,000, but how many hours of life do you give for that?" They added traffic, emails, Sunday nights. It came to 240 hours a month. Now I want you to do this math. Pause the video. Seriously. Divide your net salary by your total work hours, including traffic. Discover how much your hour of life is worth. The number might scare you. Mark's result was $33. Your life is worth $33 an hour, Mark. That is the value for which you sell time with your child. The uncle took the SUV key. The payment is $2,100 divided by 33. Mark did the math. Result, 63 hours. You work 63 hours, 8 full days, just to pay the installment of a car that sits in traffic. The first week of the month is just for the bank, not for you. You don't pay with money, you pay with life, and life is running out. The realization hit like an anvil. Mark looked at the car and saw a vampire sucking 8 days of his life. Julia looked at her purse and saw 30 hours in the trash. The return to the city was one of strategy. Mark listed the armored SUV for sale. At the office, they laughed at him. "Going broke, Mark," he replied firmly. "No, I'm buying my freedom. My life is worth more than a leather seat." But don't think it was easy. The system doesn't let a slave escape without trying to bring him back. 3 days later, Mark had to face the final boss, the bank manager. He walked into the branch to cancel the exclusive account. The manager smiled and said, "Mark, you will lose the black status. We can increase your limit right now to 50,000. It's already approved." The old Mark would have trembled, would have felt important, but the new Mark saw the truth. He didn't see a friend. He saw a dealer offering the next dose of interest. He looked into the manager's eyes and said, "Friend, I don't want a limit. I want to sleep. Your bank sold me insomnia for 5 years. I came to cancel the subscription." Meanwhile, Julia faced the vanity test. There was the rich cousin's wedding, the event of the year. Everyone would be there to judge. Julia opened the empty wardrobe and took out an old dress she had already worn 3 times. Her hand itched to grab the card and buy a new $1,000 dress. The voice of vanity screamed, "They will say Mark went broke. You need to keep up appearances." She sat on the bed and cried. Detox from appearance hurts. Mark came in, hugged her and said, "Honey, we go with our heads held high. Everyone there will be drinking champagne and thinking about Monday's bill. Our account will be in the green. Who is the real rich person at this party?" They went in the economy car. The valet looked askance. Julia wore the repeated dress. And do you know what happened? Nothing. The world didn't end. No one stopped the party. They realized the liberating truth. No one cares about you. People are too busy with their own debts and appearances. Julia danced all night free. On the way back in the paid-off car, they laughed. They had beaten the system and the need for approval. The 30th arrived. For the first time in 5 years, money was left over. $2,500 clean. They cried with relief in the kitchen. They didn't run to the mall. They invested in the Freedom Fund. Today they earn $8,000, but live as if they earned 5. The rest buys freedom. They learned. Wealth is not what the neighbor sees. Wealth is having time. Wealth is laying your head on the pillow and owing nothing. And you, how much is your hour worth? How many hours do you throw in the trash for appearance? Remember Uncle Joe. Money comes back. Time does not. If this story woke you up, comment, "My life is priceless." I hope to see you in the next video, a little freer and richer than today. Stay with God and see you in the next story.